Chargers go. Way to save the season to throw. Fire down! It was blast out at the goal line by San Diego. Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. First they have to here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
Man, fires you up every time. What's up, everybody? Garrett, Craig, Jamie here. We are back for Roundtable. We, had our little break during the holidays, but we're back. Happy New Year, everybody, and thanks for joining us. So we've got our Discord questions, we got our Twitter questions, we got our bad tweets, we got it all today. Guys, how are we feeling for the new year? Are we happy to not have to really watch football for football's sake and just start to move on to the offseason? Because I'm already excited about it.
I'm ready for the draft. I'm ready to start. I started breaking down players this weekend, so I'm ready for that.
Same boat. It's been a couple of weeks. I started a few weeks ago with some skill players, and I've pretty much just put this season in my rearview already. It's just next set of leadership and potential players that can be on the team. So looking forward to it as well.
All right. Well, since the Chargers are out of it, we got a question here from Blazing Bolt. Let's just start it right off. Blazing Bolts, thanks for the donation. Thoughts on the AFC West division this season? Craig, how are you feeling about the West?
I mean, it's a complete mess, and lo and behold, the Chiefs are kind of trying to feel their way through it, and the Chargers can't even be competitive this year. So it feels a little bit like a kick in the pants. But in general, like I said, it's a little all over the place. When you look at the Broncos situation and Russell Wilson and how that's going and the dumpster fire that is being created over there. There's all sorts of questions going on within that organization, especially with leadership and where Sean Payton is concerned. The Raiders have interim head coach that they seem to be playing well for. We'll see how that works out come the end of this year. And again, I mean, we know what's going on with the Chargers, complete mess, but also, like I said before, the Chiefs don't seem like the Titans that they once were.
Yeah, I would say the AFC West has just been disappointing in one word. Chargers not living up to expectations. The Raiders are a disaster. The Broncos are an internal disaster. You finally get a season where the Chiefs are not as good as everybody thinks they're going to be, where everybody's got a chance to catch up, and nobody could catch them. Nobody could take advantage of it. So just a big shit show and a big disappointment.
Yeah, I know. The 1 year where the Chiefs don't look superhuman, Chargers are competing for a top 5 pick right now. I mean, it's just it's terrible and it sucks. The AFC West is no good. I mean, it feels like everybody's got to do a reboot. It's not just the Chargers. I mean, Denver, now their quarterback situation is a mess, and they paid Russell Wilson a ton of money. So they're going to have to figure that whole thing out, and probably just going to have to eat a bunch of money to get rid of him. The Raiders are an issue, whether they want to keep Antonio Pierce or not. Hopefully they do. Is a big question this offseason. They don't have a quarterback. I mean, their whole roster is in disarray, and the Chiefs, Mahomes, while he's Mahomes-ish, his wide receiving core is not good at all. And they lead the league in drops, and the defense isn't enough to kind of keep them afloat now. It feels like they're just going to limp into the playoffs and hope that they can turn it around when they hit the playoffs. But, man, it seems like there's other teams like the Ravens that are climbing. Shout out Todd Monken, by the way. Not a friend of the podcast, but a guy we were very high on during the coaching cycle. And glad to see him have some success with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. But, I mean, the division's bad, and it felt like this could have been the year that the Chargers could have made some noise for that AFC West crown, which I don't think we've really said for the last couple of years, but they just were not good enough again.
It's never really lived up to the hype from a couple of years ago. So when everyone was kind of making that mass exodus from everywhere into the AFC West, and it looked like it was going to be the best division in all of football, it just never quite panned out.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mahomes isn't really himself on the field, and you kind of wonder if he's tarnishing his image a little bit with the
Oh,
way
about all
he's
the whining and stuff he's been doing
with
this
all the
season?
whining and crying. I mean, I watched the Raiders game on Christmas Day, and I'll be damned if he didn't cry a couple times during that game. I mean, definitely had tears welling up in his eyes.
Yeah.
He's just coming across like a big spoiled brat.
Mhm.
And of course, the league is letting him get away with it, but not
Yep.
playing well. The people around him aren't playing well, and he's just not handling it well, not looking like a leader at all.
No. And he went after the refs that one game, openly able to criticize the referees and not really seeing much from it. And the way in which he yells at his coaches and the referees and stuff in games, I mean, everybody talks about, all these different players that do that stuff, but Mahomes is just not being mentioned in that same breath anymore. But man, he does look like a huge crybaby because it's just not going his way this year, and you could tell it's affecting him.
Spoiled
Yeah.
and enabled. I mean, from whether it's just leadership on the team or the NFL in general, I think there's a larger problem there. He's been the golden boy. He's kind of the face of the league since Brady's left, and they kind of let him do whatever it is he wants to do. So it's nobody's fault but the NFL's.
All right.
Yeah, and you kind of have to wonder after a weekend where people were talking about whether or not Lamar Jackson was quarterbacky, and I think we know what that was subtext for.
Uh-huh.
Is Patrick Mahomes still quarterbacky, or
Yeah.
is he just a baby?
Okay, let's move on to these questions. Chat, keep putting your questions in. We'll get to yours shortly. Thanks, Blazing Bolts, for your question. And let's go right to Discord here. And Craig.
Cool. So this one's from Todd. How many / what positions deserve legitimate competition for the spot this offseason? What do you say, Jamie?
All of them except
Yeah.
for quarterback and left tackle. I mean,
That's what I was going to say. Like, what the better question is, like, who's
which ones
got
don't?
their? Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, if you look at it position by position, I would say every offensive line spot, with the exception of left tackle, should have a competition. I don't know that right tackle will, but I think you can expect at least 3 of those 4 spots to have competition. Running back, wide receiver 2 through 5, tight end, and there's going to be new people coming in at all these positions too. Linebacker is a disaster right now. You got to think they're going to cut Eric Kendricks. Are they comfortable walking away from Kenneth Murray if they cut Kendricks based on what's behind them? Defensive line, I mean, Austin Johnson, SJD gone, secondary, cornerback, safety. I mean, all of it. All of it's a mess right now.
Yeah. So to go the opposite way, Justin Herbert obviously has his spot. Rashawn Slater has earned the left tackle spot, even though he hasn't really replicated his dominant rookie year. He's definitely earned his spot at left tackle. I know we don't really like to talk about him, but I think Cameron Dicker, we don't really talk about kicker so much. If they keep him, should deserve to stay. And then, I mean, quite honestly, as you're listing like positions, is there a single position on defense where they are locked in? Thule, maybe, because I mean he's a starter. He's been good enough. You don't want to have him as depth, but is he going to be able to carry the load if Bosa and Mack are gone?
No.
Was this just a down year for Derwin? I mean, I look at this defense and I can't name, and because Thule's a rookie, he's going to get his job, but there isn't somebody that has earned their spot to come back next year and be a starter. It feels like everybody needs competition on defense.
Yeah, I mean, Derwin's locked in because of what they're paying him.
Well, sure.
Asante Samuel Jr. is locked in as a former 2nd-round pick, and I mean, arguably the most, even though he hasn't been great, the most consistent cover guy on the team, arguably. But aside from that, there's nobody. I mean, Thule, we've all loved the rookie season Thule's had, but I mean, he kind of plateaued after about mid-season. He hasn't been getting the pressure. He hasn't been getting the quarterback. Still great against the run. But I mean, you could argue that 8 or 9 out of the 11 starting defensive spots should all be up for grabs next year.
Yeah, and I was speaking more of like a performance based rather than contract based, because
Yeah.
Derwin obviously is going to stay. You're not going to just outright cut Zont, but I'm just saying in terms of just strictly performance, and I was going to mention that too. Thule, great start to the year, has fallen off since then.
When you're looking at some of the more premium positions, and I'm going to stick with the defensive side of the ball because I think you made a really good point there, Garrett. Let's look at kind of the skill guys, and there are question marks everywhere. Like, we know ASJ is going to be around, but he's not a true CB1. So they still need to find that. He's probably a high-end CB2. The edge position is a huge question mark. We don't know what's going to happen with Joey. We don't know what's going to happen with Khalil. Thule's there. So you've got at least one cornerstone, I guess, player potentially. The interior defensive line is in complete flux. But again, just speaking to those more premium positions, cornerback, definitely a problem. Edge, you still have to figure that out. And those are the top two spots that I can think of that we don't really have solid answers for. And then you're looking at safety. Yeah, Derwin's going to be there. He definitely needs a true running mate, somebody who can man the deep end of the field, help take some of that responsibility off his plate to allow him to play a little bit more in the way that he should be utilized. But just in general, overall, and I hadn't really actually thought about that in too much depth, but Garrett, that's a really good point. The defense could experience some significant turnover, not just at the areas that we've been talking about here in the last few weeks. When we're just looking at edge and interior defensive line, there are question marks everywhere.
I think it needs to undergo significant turnover.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And, there's been some discussion about this in the Discord, but I think when you look at the defense, when you're looking at the team about which unit is going to lead the way for the team, I mean, they're almost at a point where they need to put all their eggs in the offensive basket, and the defense is going to be in a transition year next year, just trying to piece things together because of all the guys that are free agents and all the guys that are underperforming. That's going to be a more difficult fix, I think, than the offense is, where you can plug in a couple pieces here and there and probably have a lot more success.
And now that you mention that, also defensively, you could probably just improve if you have a scheme that fits what you have. If they can hold on to a few of those guys and kind of mix and match some pieces, then again, the question is, can they at least just be average? And better leadership, some personnel change. It doesn't have to be super high end, but also just scheme in general, playing to players' strengths, I think will help significantly. You absolutely should probably focus more so on the offensive side of the ball and give 10 as many weapons as you can, because we see how that's worked in the NFL. And if you can put up points, which he's proven he has through multiple systems, then like a middle of the road defense should be enough to at least keep you in the hunt.
Yeah. Problem is they can't even get near middle of the road. It's always at the very bottom. And so, yeah, I mean, we're focusing on defense, but there's a lot of issues on both sides of the ball for sure. But I feel like Herbert, Dicker, Slater, you want to include Thule there too, are really the four guys that feel like they've put enough on tape this season to be like, you've got your job. We can get some backups, not for kicker, but for Herbert, get a backup. Thule, get another guy alongside of him. But everybody else, like, you're not going to cut Zion Johnson and Jamari Salyer, but you're going to need some competition coming into camp.
And they have, I think they're learning that they have some competition for at least the interior offensive line. Hymas played really well on Sunday. McFadden was incredible on Sunday. I mean, far exceeded any expectations I had for him against the Broncos. So having those guys kind of gives you a jump start on the offseason where you can go and add a veteran piece, maybe a piece in the draft, and it kind of starts to feel like you're settling things down. But the defense is a whole different story. I mean, you don't know what to expect from any of those guys. We don't even know what kind of a scheme they're going to be playing in.
Yep. All right. Number 2 from Discord.
Yep. So JH times JH equals Super Bowl. I think we all know what that means, right?
No. What is that? So I get Super Bowl.
I like the equation.
John.
Is this Jim? Wait, is it
That's
John Harbaugh?
John Harbaugh plus Jamie Hoyle equals Super Bowl. Is that what that means?
Hey, whatever combination gets us Jim. It could be anything. the other one. But anyway, since QJ was TT's guy and TT is now gone, what's the likelihood they draft another round one wide receiver versus rolling with QJ, Allen, Palmer as the starters next year, assuming Mike Will is out? What do you got, Garrett?
It's Justin Herbert
Yeah.
and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
I was joking, obviously. That's
oh, you knew that? I didn't. I actually
you
didn't
didn't get that?
No, I got the Harbaugh. I didn't know what the other JH was. Justin Herbert. Sorry. So what's the likelihood they draft another or rolling with QJ? They can't roll with the latter, QJ, Allen, and Palmer as their starters. It feels like it's one of the biggest priorities in the draft, if not number one. I mean, I did a little, I kind of skimmed through draft stuff this weekend. I guess everybody was getting a little draft itch early, which feels much earlier than we have before. And just like going over the top, like 10 guys that are projected to go in the top 10, it feels like wide receiver might be number one going forward. Especially if Mike Williams is gone. I mean, I know Keenan Allen had a career year, but he's 31. QJ is an unknown. We know that. Joshua Palmer, I mean, he's flashed at times. I think at best he's wide receiver 2. If you're giving him a ceiling, I don't think he could be that wide receiver 1. There's got to be a succession plan for Keenan Allen soon. They need another reliable weapon. And they, again, as we've mentioned for years upon years now, they need some explosiveness on this offense. And they're going to need that this season. So I think there's going to be a lot of needs. But I think at the top of where the Chargers are going to pick, I think there's going to be some real value at the top of this class for wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten that deep into the draft prep, but I think you're probably, I went through the first 4 edge guys this weekend and no fucking thank you. I'm out on edge at number 6. Let's just put it that way.
That was quick.
I didn't think I would say, but that's where I am right now. But I think you got to figure wide receiver and offensive line are probably the 2 most likely picks if they stay at 6, and maybe even the 2 most likely picks if they move back. They have to put more talent around Herbert. They have to do a better job of protecting him. They have to find a way to get the ball down the field. They need explosiveness. I feel like we've been saying this every year for like the last 5 years. They need explosiveness at the skill positions, which they don't have right now. So yeah, even if QJ had panned out, I still think they might be looking at wide receiver just because Mike is made of glass. Palmer, I think, is a really, really good wide receiver 3, maybe a low end wide receiver 2. And Allen is, he's probably not long for the team, maybe even not long for the NFL, maybe another couple of years at the most. They've got to have a succession plan, like Garrett said. So I think regardless of what happened with QJ, they almost had to have another wide receiver early. Maybe not necessarily in the first round, but now that QJ has done what he's done, I think it becomes a huge need, massive need.
So it seems pretty obvious just kind of based on how things hashed out this season at the position, but I guess it really depends on their level of confidence in QJ taking a significant step next year. The problem there is that they be banking on that plus Keenan's health, Palmer's health, as he's been nicked up early in his young career, and solidifying himself as the number 2 or 3 guy. And I'd also imagine new leadership will be significantly more self-aware. Hopefully, it'd be hard not to, but I honestly believe it'll be like a top 3 priority for them. So long story less long, I'm going to roll with probably high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at the rest of the wide receiver room too. I mean, we don't know what to expect out of Darius Davis. Alex Erickson's 31, 32 years old.
I can't believe you even mentioned him.
Well, he's on the roster right now.
I know.
This is where we are at this point.
I mean, Kalen Doss, there's no depth. There's no evidence of either QJ or Darius Davis taking any kind of a step forward next year. Both those guys need a lot of work in their entire games. It's not just catching the ball. It's route running. It's separating. It's blocking. It's understanding the playbook. All of that stuff. So yeah, I think they've got to add wide receiver. They have to start getting younger, faster, and cheaper at wide receiver. They just have to. It didn't work with Mike and Keenan, and there's no reason to run that back. One or both of those guys is likely to be gone next year. They have to start putting better talent around. This offense is still built for Phillip Rivers. It is not built for Justin Herbert. They need to build the offense around Herbert instead of trying to fit him into what they already have, which is what they've been doing.
And if they really want to make a run for it next year, draft another first-round wide receiver, because Keenan Allen has gotten triggered every time they've went with a wide receiver in the first round, and he comes out during the offseason and go, this team's trying me. They did it with Mike Williams. He did an interview and they go, drafted Mike Williams. They're trying me. They're trying me. This offseason when they drafted Quentin Johnston, he's like, they're trying me again. They're trying me again. And both those seasons, career years, some of his best. So do it again this year. Maybe get a Marvin Harrison Jr. and let's run it back. Get Keenan at a peak, Keenan, and get Marvin Harrison Jr. and we're in business, man.
Maybe get somebody who can run more than 3 routes and catch the fucking ball.
Well, that's a minimum, but not for the Chargers, I guess. All right. Number 3.
This is from Sam G. Is center or right tackle the bigger need, especially when it comes to batted passes and Justin getting his finger smashed? And how should both positions be addressed? So this is a good question. So to me, center is kind of invaluable. Like the loss of Corey Linsley was what essentially crippled this team, especially on the interior portion of the line. I believe like both Zion and Jamari suffered for it. So center is probably where I'm going to roll with that. I mean, a good OC can probably mitigate some of Pipkin's shortcomings, but I'd still bring in competition for him. I'd rather a vet center, but I'd definitely be looking at one starting around like round 3. I haven't really looked at centers in the draft class quite yet, but if they are any, high-end top-level guys, probably start looking there more towards the middle rounds, starting around round 3. But you also have the option to kind of kick Zion inside, maybe have him compete for that center position since since McFadden showed himself to be pretty serviceable the other day. I think he's also already played in college in Clemson. I think he played up and down the offensive line. I think the only position he didn't play was center, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think he played center, but everything else he pretty much did. So McFadden's an option at left guard if you want to give Zion a chance to run it back at center or go step into the center role in the event that Linsley doesn't come back. I think that's an option. But again, I think center is probably the most valuable because of all of the other positions it affects, specifically on the interior of the offensive line. And again, Pipkins needs competition, but if you get an OC and a head coach that have a plan and know how to help him and make him a little bit less of a weakness, you can probably find ways to get around that. And
just to tackle on, because I'm with you. I think it's center, but also we've mentioned before that Trey Pipkins is going to be here in 2024. I mean, they would have to eat like $9.5 million to cut him. So he's going to be here. They can't cut him till 2025. So that's when his ripcord is. So he, at the very least, right tackle has a body there. At center, it's a wasteland. I mean, Linsley, well, Hymas had a good game. Lindsey should retire. Will Clapp should not be back on an NFL roster next season. And then, like Craig's mentioning, you can do a lot of shifting with Zion at center if you wanted to, put McFadden at center if you wanted to, mix those 3 kind of interior guys and have Hymas there for competition, which I don't know why it took 12 years to get Brendan Hymas in at center, but here we are. But both positions are going to need competition either way. And in my mind, I feel like it's got to come in the draft. Just looking at the free agent class, the right tackle, center are absolutely bleak. I thought Connor Williams was a guy I was looking at like towards the middle of the year when Lindsey wasn't going to come back, and he like tore his ACL already. And they just don't, and they're cash strapped. So it's not like they can go out and spend for anybody. And a vet might work as competition, but what having both a need at center and right tackle among a bevy of other needs. But if you're just focused on the offensive line right now, the benefits are centers don't normally go early in the draft. So you're looking at a day 2 center in the round 2 or 3. And then if you've got Trey Pipkins, knowing he's going to be there for another season, you can wait a little bit and get like a developmental guy that has some tools, but is maybe a year or 2 away. You have him compete with Trey Pipkins, but know that Pipkins can start there too. And it'll give the rookie a little bit more time to, develop and become hopefully an NFL right tackle. So knowing you've got that year with Pipkins would give the rookie a little bit of a cushion and a learning curve. And then at center, you don't have to waste that early pick at 6 on a center. You can wait till day 2 to get one of those. So both positions going to need some competition, but in terms of which one I think they need more, I think it's got to be center.
So I think we're all pretty much on the same page. The one thing I will say though is I'm not sure that I want Zion Williamson anywhere near center.
Me
Zion
neither.
Johnson.
Yeah, if he's going to play center
Johnson.
for the Pelicans, I don't want him.
Excuse me, Zion Johnson. I knew I was going to do that. I don't want Zion anywhere near center. Period.
He's a power forward.
A buffet.
Or a buffet.
He has so many issues with twists and stunts up front that I would not want him calling out the protections in the middle of the line. And I'm of the mind that I think you get an actual offensive line coach with a brain who can teach in here, and you leave him at left guard and you give him a season in a new scheme with a real coach and see how that goes. I think you need competition at center. I think you do that with Hymas, and I think you cross-train McFadden at left guard, center, and right guard, and you have those two compete at all 3 interior offensive line spots with Johnson and Salyer. I think Salyer probably gets outplayed in that scenario, and you probably wind up with either McFadden or Hymas playing right guard, and then you draft a center somewhere day 2, day 3 to develop behind them. If they play well, great. Maybe you can move that center to another interior offensive line position. But I think whoever you put in there is going to need some development. At least you have the advantage of McFadden and Hymas having been here for a year or more. It's not a rookie that you're inserting at the center position, which I think we've seen is extremely important in any offense, but especially in this offense. So yeah, they're not going to replace Pipkins. They're paying him. They're stuck with him for another year. I think the best case scenario with Pipkins is a day 2 or day 3 right tackle. Most likely, probably day 3 developmental right tackle. But yeah, I think you got to find a center, and I think they've invested so much time into Hymas. It'd be a shame not to at least give him a chance to win that job. And I think you give McFadden a chance to win one of those 3 jobs in camp.
If you want to give the last regime credit for anything, they did have that last little influx of investing in the interior offensive line, and it might pay off starting next year, especially if these guys can be developed. So pat on the back on your way out of the door, Tom and Brandon, I guess.
I got to say, having gone back and rewatched that Bronco game specifically to watch McFadden and Hymas, those 2 guys were both phenomenal in their own ways in that game. Hymas just kind of blended in. There were no protection busts in the middle of that line. There was one running play that didn't get fitted up very well, and I'm pretty sure Salyer missed the block. Otherwise, those guys, I thought, communicated well. They handled the blitzes and the stunts extremely well in the middle of the line, and the Broncos were testing them, and they blocked everything up really well. And McFadden is mean. He's strong. He's nasty, and you can tell he's smart and he gets what's going on. So I think they deserve some credit for taking the time to develop Hymas and for picking McFadden as late as they did and finding someone who I think has a chance to be a pretty good starting offensive lineman in this league for a while.
Looks pretty good when you're not asking him to play fullback, huh?
Can I just, on a side note, whatever this cat's picture is Sam's got here, it needs to be changed. I think it needs I need to get into Discord and make a rule about it, because this is weird. I don't want this. This thing's been staring at me like the entire time we've been doing this question. I don't like it.
You're not a cat guy, Garrett?
Cats or whatever. Well, I'm a dog guy more than a cat guy. But also, this movie I didn't watch this movie, but it looks unwatchable. And the fact that he's got a character there to represent him is frustrating. I think our listeners
your
are better.
support, Sam. We appreciate it, even if your choice in profile photos isn't all that great.
Jamie does not speak for the whole Lightning Round podcast when he says that, because I am not with that. Sam, get out of here with that.
Sam, whatever you're into, man, just be safe. That's all I ask. Whatever
next time, you got 24 hours, Sam. I'm throwing down the gauntlet here. Change that. All right. Question here from the chat. Let's get into it. All right. You get Harbaugh in 2025, but to do so, the Chargers must bring back either Mike McCoy, Brandon Staley, or Anthony Lynn for one season in 2024. Who are you picking?
Why are we waiting until 2025?
Because he wants to return to Michigan. So, this is the hypothetical. Michigan loses the national championship game. Harbaugh goes, I'm going to run it back one more year. He wins the championship in 2024. He's ready to go to the NFL. But you got to bring one of them back for, I don't know, reasons unknown. But
I'm not watching football for a year.
I want Brandon Staley, so there's another high draft pick. Because we didn't get a top 6 pick with McCoy or Lynn, did we? No, this is the highest we got. So
no,
we got Bosa.
Oh, Bosa! Damn it. Okay, all right. Well then,
Herbert was the 5th pick, wasn't he? 5th or 6th?
Yeah,
he was 6th. Oh yeah. Okay. So, all right.
And Mike was 7.
Yeah, which is lower, but okay.
But still,
so
top 10.
Top 10.
Okay. Yeah, I guess they're all pretty bad in their own route, huh? They're all equally bad.
They all suck.
Yeah.
This is oh God, this is horrible. Why do this to us?
I don't know. I was just trying to give an answer.
I refuse.
You guys are bad. All right. So from TH,
are we not going to give him an answer?
Apparently, you guys aren't. I said Staley.
I'll go with Lynn, and he can help out on special teams.
Cute. Okay. All right. We'll move on. Craig's not even gonna do it. TH, so do we want Harbaugh to win the Natty or no? What makes his move to the NFL more likely? What do you guys think? We know what the Chargers think.
I was going to say
I don't think it especially matters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
No, I don't think it matters either. Yeah, I think we agree there.
Yeah, I think if he was going to go back, he probably would have already signed the extension. So I don't think it matters. At this point, I'm kind of rooting for them to win just to kill the whole he can't win a big game narrative. But I think he's gone either way. I don't think it matters.
The Chargers believe, and if you're part of the Discord, you can see this, that if Harbaugh wins the national championship, it makes it a more clean break, they believe, from Harbaugh moving away from Michigan, riding the sunset, winning the national championship. He can win. He gave the program a trophy. They win it all, and then he can ride off in the sunset and take his job in the NFL. So they believe a national championship would help.
Makes sense. I would just say, if you look at the big picture, he's got almost 20 kids leaving for the NFL this year. He's sitting on 2 extensions that he hasn't accepted yet. He's gotten them all the way to the national championship game. They were a total disaster when he took them over. He's made them not only relevant, but a title contender. And if he loses, he may look at it and say, I've taken this as far as I can. I'm out. So I just feel like there's so many breadcrumbs there suggesting that he's done regardless, either right off into the sunset with a title, or I did everything I can. I want nothing to do with the sanctions that are coming down from the cheating scandal. I'm out.
Yes.
So do you think that his price increases if he wins a national championship?
I'm going to say that we already kind of have a general idea of what it would probably take to get him. We're talking somewhere in between 15 and 20. Like if that's kind of the area we want to talk about. So yeah, if he wins the Natty, the price of the brick probably goes up a little. So if we're talking like 15 mil, 16 right now, then you can tack on another couple mil, especially if you're Dean and you're willing to shell out the cash, which is what you're claiming you're, okay with doing at this point. Then yeah, I don't think it deters Dean from getting the deal done. But it probably does increase his value significantly. Like I said, at least a few mil. And also with that being said, just piggybacking off of the last question, same thing. What Jamie mentioned, I want him to succeed because I want this narrative about him not being able to win the big games to go away, because it's literally the only thing people keep sticking to, like the ones that really don't like him for whatever the reason is. He's turned around, 4 programs already? And now this is like the icing on the cake. He finishes this out. There really is nothing else to complain about. And I think it makes him that much more appealing to Dean and company. So yeah, back to this question, as far as the price, yeah, probably goes up a bit. But if you're Dean and you weren't yanking our chains, then you're willing to pay it.
Just give him what he wants. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know that winning the championship changes his price too much. I think the biggest threat to his price is a team like the Raiders jumping in and trying to run the price up. I think that's the biggest hurdle or issue with his price. I think his value is what it is. Somebody's going to pay him 15, 16, 17 million. The threat is somebody else jumping in and running that up closer to 20 or over 20. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I don't know that winning a national championship really correlates to more money, knowing how much he's already wanted in the NFL already. I think that's just kind of a small little blip. I think really he's going to be bidding against other teams, and Raiders being one of them. I know Bears have been rumored, but I don't know that happens.
And let's face it, winning bowl games, winning national titles in college football, while I think it would be nice to see him win it just to kill the narrative that he can't do it, I don't think winning games in college football has any correlation whatsoever to winning games in the NFL. It's two completely different worlds with completely different requirements, completely different expectations in terms of how, working around the clock and working year round and all that kind of stuff. It's just different. I don't think one has anything to do with the other. And for that reason, that's another reason why I don't really think that him winning the national championship drives his price up a whole lot.
Yeah. Ask Urban Meyer and Nick Saban.
It ends up being more hardware at the end of the day.
Steve Spurrier.
All of them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Craig.
No, I'm saying it just ends up being more hardware at the end of the day. I mean, you can make a claim to having won at the highest level where you were, and now you have an opportunity to come back and cement your legacy at the NFL level. So, where it may somewhat be nominal, if we're talking about the dollar side of it, as far as cachet goes, it probably ups him a little bit.
So Sam G is back. He says it's a cult classic. We're referring to his picture, and that he has changed the picture. So
did we bully Sam and Garrett? I'm blaming you.
Yeah. No, okay. Yes. Jamie and Craig didn't. Garrett did. Yes. I bullied him into not having that cat's picture in his profile. Yes, I did that. Yes.
That was a fire turnaround, Sam.
And I'm happy. Thank you, Sam. You've been around for a very long time. I think, right? Isn't this Sam G 1383 from like way back in the day? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's the same guy. I'm pretty sure.
So he's like one of the originals. And I don't know that it's a cult classic. I don't know what cult you're in to think this is a classic, but no thanks. It's not even a cat classic. What is Goomba talking about?
And Sam, come on. If it's a cult classic, stick to your guns and keep the picture. Don't let Garrett, of all people, bully you into changing it.
No, there's so many better cat movies he could have picked, and he picked like probably the worst of them.
Maybe there was like some deep personal meaning he found in that flick, man.
In that weird woman dressed as a half cat.
You realize it's not just a movie, right? You know that?
What do you mean? Well,
it's based on a Broadway play.
Yeah, Broadway show. Yeah,
was that Cats, the movie?
That's not on Broadway anymore. It tried to have a comeback and nobody watched it. And then they tried to make a movie about it and nobody watched it. And it's a major flop.
Apparently Sam watched it.
I get so much so.
He is the one.
He's the one person. But there's so many better cat movies.
It's all right, Sam. We still love you, dog.
Maybe a little less, but we still love you.
Oh, he changed it to his dogs, who he loves so much more. Well, Sam, good. I'm glad. See, that's got a personal tie. I like the feeling of this, not of cats. All right, Jamie, you're up. Let me get your Twitter questions. Here we go. You see that?
From
Okay.
at ChargerMan89, if Neighbors isn't there, would you want Bowers or Odunze? Garrett, what do you think?
I would want a Dunze. We've mentioned this before, and by the way, Brock Bowers declared today, so he's good. He's definitely going to be in the draft, and good for him. Smart move there. But tight end is a luxury pick, and the Chargers just can't afford to do that in top 10. Odunze fills a need at wide receiver capabilities. He's an explosive wide receiver. Bowers is a good player, but I think investing in a tackle at 6 makes much more sense to, a tackle to take over for Trey Pipkins sooner rather than later, hopefully, is a much more sound investment than drafting Bowers. At least you're protecting Herbert with a tackle, or you're giving Herbert a more explosive weapon in a wide receiver than it would be to pick a tight end at 6. So Bowers is a great player, but I don't think they have the not only the draft capital, but I just don't think they have the luxury to make a pick like this, unless they traded down and Bowers fell to them later in the draft. Like, say if they traded down to 11, 12, 13, Bowers is there, and they picked up another second round pick that they can use, or a first next year, or whatever. That I can maybe get behind. This I'm more inclined to take a Dunze.
Today, I'm going to probably roll with the Dunze, and it's for all the reasons we already discussed about the Chargers wide receiver room and the issues that they could be running into. Now, this is no slight to Bowers because I really like him. And again, like I said, as of today, it's a Dunze. When we get into the whole, draft prep thing, I mean, that could change, but really not sure if it will. And again, no slight to him. You could use Bowers in multiple ways, whether we're talking like H-back slot, maybe even line him up outside against man, where a linebacker or safety would have to single up on him, and he would have the advantage there. So yeah, you could deploy him maybe a little bit differently than a Dunze, but if we're talking about the room in general and the potential issues you could be running into that could smack you right in the face and completely derail your season, you probably want to roll with the wide receiver.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to take the wide receiver too. And I preface that with saying I haven't really studied either Bowers or Odunze, so that opinion could change. I doubt it will based on just positional value, but
got a good look at him last night. That's the in-depth I've looked so far.
Yeah, I mean he's obvious. Odunze is obviously a playmaker. Bowers is obviously very talented. I think both guys would add to the offense, but I think adding a big play weapon outside is of the utmost importance, as it has been for 5 years now. So, right now I would lean towards taking Odunze.
He's also 6'3", so that probably helps his cause.
Oh, so they're definitely taking him. He's a power forward.
They're building a basketball team. Remember? All right, and I think when we. Because we get this question a lot, and I'm sure we're going to get it a ton more, and we can start now. But there is no shade thrown at Bowers in this scenario. It's just that it is not the Chargers don't have the luxury to make a pick at tight end when they really, really need somebody at wide receiver. And I know the tight end room is a mess. I totally get that. But this is obviously no slight against Bowers.
No slight at all. Just a positional value thing and a explosiveness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Question number 2.
This is from Francis Tandiama. With the rumblings that Vrabel might part ways with Tennessee, where would he rank after Harbaugh? Craig?
So with Tomlin off the board, probably puts Vrabel at number 2 for me. He'd be immediately more respected in the building than any recent Chargers coach. So he'd bring a legit, palpable level of toughness that they've been lacking. He would probably be the equivalent of Mike Myers to John Spanos and have him crapping his pants on a daily basis, someone that he would not want to get in the way of. He's managed to be consistently competitive with a Tennessee team that hasn't always boasted the most talent either. And then he could actually be looking to get out of there potentially. I mean, he wasn't happy about that whole A.J. Brown trade situation. It seems like he was kind of undermined there.
Mm-hmm.
And the only downside to this, I would say, to probably not necessarily get your hopes up, is he's probably New England's first choice if this is the end of the Bill Belichick era. So I'm not sure how viable of an option he'd actually be for the Chargers, because I would imagine having, basically been so successful as a player with the organization, he'd want to go back there, and it would probably mean a lot to them to have him there as well. So yeah, and again, him being a defensive head coach, not necessarily what we want per se, but if we're talking about having a guy with experience that's still being able to be competitive for the most part, regardless of the level of talent that he's had, it probably slots him right there at 2 for me.
Yeah, I'm of the same. Yeah, I agree. It's number 2 outside of Harbaugh. I think we all think that it's an easy transition to move to New England if he ever does leave, and Bill Belichick hangs it up. But I mean, Vrabel, all he did is win in his first 2 years, or first 4 years, and then the last 2 years, Tannehill got hurt, hit a wall. Every quarterback after that has been bad. It really felt like when you saw that draft day footage that Vrabel did not have any say in A.J. Brown getting fired, because he was very surprised and disappointed when that happened. So, it just feels like he's the type of guy that would bring a culture to the Chargers that you would absolutely love to have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's experienced. He would have instant respect from the players because he played the game at a high level and he won rings at a high level. And he wins regardless of talent. And he's going to have a tough, resilient, gritty team, because we saw it on a Tennessee team with like very little talent. So
Yeah.
You give him some real talent, give him some draft capital to play with, let him run. I think he'd be a very, very good number 2 option or 1B option, however you want to look at it.
All right, run real quick. If Mike Tomlin is available and Vrabel is available, who do you want out of those 2? And Harbaugh's not available. You got to pick one of those 2. Who would you rather have, Tomlin or Vrabel?
I would go with Tomlin, and I would go with Tomlin because he comes from a stable, consistent organization. The culture has always been good, no matter who was in that room, and he's dealt with some freaking head cases in that locker room. I just feel like, and he wins with or without a quarterback. The fact that he's got that team in a position to make the playoffs this year, with what they've got to deal with at quarterback, is borderline miracle type stuff. So I think, and he's also, he's done it longer with greater success. So it'd be tough, but I think for me it would be Tomlin.
To me, it's not as tough, even though I like Vrabel. It'd definitely be Tomlin. Got championship pedigree. Also, like Jamie spoke to, his ability to win still, again, through all this time, never have a losing season, regardless of the level of talent. And yeah, there have been some nut jobs that have run through that organization. So to be able to still keep the team on track throughout all of that nonsense. And again, like this year, I feel really, really bad for that guy. Like, look at what he's dealing with from a quarterback perspective, and he's still going to finish the season with at least another winning record. So just someone who's been a part of an organization that knows what it means to win, how to build a franchise, and values, or shown proper positional values at the right spots. I mean, some questionable stuff here and there, but again, he's been able to coach successfully through it all. So Tomlin would get my vote there.
I mean, imagine being able to somehow make Antonio Brown not seem like an absolute mental head case. Like, he somehow made him seem, a little eccentric. And then He left Pittsburgh, and it was just an absolute nightmare.
I still
every
think
team.
that hit that he took from was it not? I was about to say Levante.
Montez Burfict.
Montez Burfict. He was never the same after that hit.
But yeah, 16 years. I mean, Tomlin's my guy too. I would take Tomlin, and a guy Vrabel was able to win a lot with a lot of not very much talent. Tomlin always having a winning record, always.
I think you'd have to be very careful and very intentional about his coordinators, particularly who's calling the offense. But I still think Tomlin would be a really good fit, and you might get the side benefit of maybe a couple of the front office people from Pittsburgh following him over, and that's one of the best player personnel operations in the league, has been for a long time. So a lot of benefits there.
Do you just want to say don't bring Todd Haley over? Is that what you want to? You just want to outright directly say that, or
no Todd Haley, no Matt Canada, no.
Send Matt Canada to Canada.
Send him back to.
Send him to Siberia. And Haley can go with him.
Canada's too close.
You can do the CFL.
Funny. All right. Last one. For Twitter.
From Big Daddy E3737.
Always gets there.
Got him.
If LAC stays put at pick 6, is there any way you'd be enticed to take a Bears-like trade where QB needy teams like Las Vegas, Denver, Minnesota come up from the teams to swap first and get their first next year, or is a talent too valuable to pass up this year in the top 6? Garrett? I'll start with this one.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I think, we talk about taking a wide receiver. We talk about taking an offensive lineman early in the first round, the top 6. But if somebody comes up and they want a quarterback and they're willing to overpay and give you a first this year and a first next year, maybe you get a second and a third or a second and a fourth this year. Trading back is always a dream. The Chargers need bodies. They need able bodies who can play the game. And the more picks you get, the better off you are. So, yeah, you'd be dumb not to at least entertain the idea of trading back if somebody's willing to come up and say take Michael Penix Jr. at number 6 or Bo Nix or basically anybody but JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, man, I'm wheeling it. If I'm GM, I'm wheeling and dealing, man. As long as it's not too far down. I mean, if you're talking 20s, I think you're too far down. But yeah, I mean, they have so many holes to fill. We talked about, they've got so many holes in this roster. And we even just pointed at defensively. It seems like they got to do wholesale changes, but either way, they got to get more picks. And if they can do that, I mean, so last year, the Lions traded the number 6 pick to Arizona. It was like first, second, and like a day 3 pick of that year. I would absolutely do that. And I think they moved down like 6 spots or something. So if you move down 6 to 9 spots, pick up, just move down, get a second this year, maybe something kick down the road. I would absolutely do that. They're talking about a first next year. Absolutely. So trying to get a quarterback. I'm doing it.
So reading this, I have to focus on getting my mind out of, working around the scar tissue that is there based on the previous regime and their choices, because this is a great question. If I'm thinking along those same lines, then I'm not sure if I would want to trade out of the top 10, but I'd definitely be intrigued. It would depend on the team and the likelihood of that 2025 first round pick being early-ish. That was if we were still dealing with like the Tom Telesco, Brandon Staley tandem. Again, hopefully new leadership is a bit more self-aware so they can come in and understand what the team needs moving forward, working through some of these expiring contracts, maybe having to come up off of some of the guys that have become staples with the team that are getting paid high dollar that you can't kick the can down the road on anymore. In that case, I would say, yeah, I'm fine with trading back. But again, kind of like Garrett mentioned, I don't want to go too far back. But the more that you can build upon, the more talent, young talent, cheap talent you can stockpile this roster with, the better. So again, thinking forward with who may be coming in, I feel a lot better about the trade back. If we were talking about what we were just dealing with, I don't know if I'd want to do it.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into this chat a little bit here. Let's see. Eddie Dale Jr. About Bowers. It worked out for the Lions. Tight end over wide receiver these days, to be honest. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had a career year this year. He's got like over 1,300 yards. So I don't know that it was Sam Laporta that put him over the edge. I mean, it helped their offense, while Brock Bowers would probably help the Chargers offense too. But they had a number one wide receiver already. They drafted another wide receiver in the first round, Jamison Williams, that they were going to get back. I mean, they invested some capital in wide receiver already. So they kind of had that, and they had a ton of picks. So they kind of had that luxury to get Sam Laporta. I don't know that that's what attribute to their success. Do you guys think Sam Laporta pushed them over the edge?
I mean, he definitely helped, but he also wasn't a top 10 selection either. So we're talking about different areas of when these players were taken. It was awesome. Was Laporta second round?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a second round tight end that's contributing to an offense that has an established run game and a number one wide receiver and at least one complementary wide receiver that they can use to help stretch the field to create like some of that open underneath stuff and crossers that they do a lot of with Amon-Ra. Yeah, he helps to complement it, and he fits really, really well within their scheme, but they had pretty much all the requisite pieces around it already. So, again, it's another one of those picks where it helps your offense, and yes, taking them to new heights, but I'm not going to sit here and say that if they didn't have Laporta, they wouldn't be still a successful offense. I don't believe that at all. So I don't think this really makes the case for tight end over wide receiver.
Where did the Lions pick last year? Were they middle of the round? Didn't they almost make the playoffs last year?
But they got picks from the Rams from that Stafford trade. I'm almost positive this was in the 30s. Like this was top of the second
early second round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge difference between taking a tight end at 6 and taking a tight end at like 34, 35, 36. I mean,
he went 34th overall.
Yeah. It's just it's a huge difference. It's not an apples to apples comparison. And you also have to have the right play caller there, calling the right plays. I mean, we talked about this in the Discord today. Was people are talking about taking Bowers, and I said great, because they were comparing Bowers to Kelsey. Awesome. Are we going to have Andy Reid designing and calling plays for Bowers? Are we going to have the right person calling those plays?
Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson. You know, does Harbaugh loves his tight end, so maybe they get Harbaugh and maybe that works out. But I just don't think this is an apples to apples comparison. And the Lions wide receiver room was drastically different than the Chargers wide receiver room is right now. So
also keep this in mind, because I know that, I think I saw it in the chat. People were mentioning Gibbs. Gibbs is a pick that also works out because that offensive line was built out as well. So the combination of Gibbs and Montgomery has worked wonders for them because they had the offensive line shored up. So yeah, talking about going off the beaten path and drafting a running back in the first round, I get that's not the most popular thing when you're talking about positional value, not necessarily what the league has shifted towards, but you have to look at the overall build of the team. You have the option to do things like that when you've constructed the rest of your roster properly, so you can take chances like that.
And this is a multi-year rebuild for the Lions too, might I add. I mean, this is I remember they had mentioned after their like 10th win, it was the first time in like 9 years that they got double-digit wins. So they were a single win team for a very long time. And Dan Campbell came in and they let Dan Campbell slowly build that team up. And they were, what did they have last year? 9 wins or something? They're, I think, just above 500. So they were able to do it through a couple of years. This was not just an overnight flip of the switch and now they're good.
Yeah, Laporta was more like one of the last pieces to that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were talking about earlier, Garrett, the luxury. They had the luxury of taking the running back and the tight end early because they had everything else figured out up front and outside. And the Chargers just aren't in that situation.
All right, next question from Robert Oliver. If you had to trade/cut 3 of the 4 following to achieve cap space, who do you keep? Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I feel like we keep Keenan Allen. I think that's a pretty easy question. Right? Or somebody have a different answer?
I would say it would come down to Mac or Keenan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily an easy choice given the state of the edge class in the draft and the wide receiver class in the draft. You could make a strong argument for keeping Mac because he makes Thule better and taking Neighbors or Adunze at 6. And you're probably in a better position than you are if you cut Mac and keep Keenan.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just again, I think it was a part of the group chat, well, maybe over the weekend. Jamie kind of asked about the edge group, and I remember kind of looking it over and not being wild either. It would make a lot of sense for the same reasons that he spoke to keep Khalil. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like we mentioned before, the edge group could really be in flux in a few months here, and really only having Thule around isn't necessarily what you want to go into the offseason with. You know, a second-year guy who, although showed some really great chops off the edge this season, still needs to develop. And having someone who can produce as a veteran presence would probably be invaluable to him. Also, you know, having someone who can produce on the opposite edge from him would be invaluable to the team in general. But definitely, if you're going to ask me specifically, I think I'm going to hold on to Mac, even though that's a rough one because, you know, Keenan has every right to stick around and he's made himself a legacy guy. He's still going to produce probably at near elite level for at least another 2 years just because his game translates so well into the offense. Well, we don't know what the offense is going to be moving forward, but it's not predicated on athleticism. He can still be effective from the slot and on the outside just because of the nuance associated with his game, but probably keeping Khalil in this instance.
Okay, next.
Let's change that question a little bit.
Okay.
Let's say cut 2, keep 1, trade 1.
Keep 1, cut 1, trade
cut 1, keep 2, trade 1. I'm sorry. I said that wrong.
Yeah.
I'm confusing myself.
Uh-huh.
Keep 1, cut 2, trade 1.
I am trading Mike Williams because I think he's got the most trade value of this group. I think Mac has made a case, but I feel like wide receivers always bring in some money or some draft capital. And I think there's a lot of value there with Mike Williams. Just his contract doesn't make sense and the Chargers are cash strapped. So I would say trade Mike Williams. Or is Bosa? Wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to stick with Mike Williams and I'm keeping Keenan and I'm cutting both my edge players.
Greg?
Okay. So that's interesting because when you look at both Mike Will and Bosa, you run into some similar issues where we're talking about health. But if I had to guess, looking at some of the teams in the league and what they're missing, I'm thinking of one in particular, could probably use a big body wide receiver and you can maybe milk them a little bit more for it. So I'm going to say you trade Mike Will. You keep trade Mike Will. I'm going to keep Keenan and I guess
the edge guys.
I guess. But again, you get the draft capital back in Mike Will, so you may be able to make a couple of things happen there. I'm just thinking bigger picture. Probably cut both the edge guys, keep Keenan, trade Mike Will, just because of what I think I could get back from Mike Will and how we can maneuver that into maybe some other edge guys.
I don't think Mike Williams has any trade value after finishing the last 2 years on the IR.
Oh.
I really don't.
Okay.
He's been hurt, finished multiple seasons of his career on the IR. He is fragile. If it's me, I think Keenan has the most value of this group. And I know everybody's got a sentimental attachment to Keenan, and I know nobody wants to trade him, and he's the number one wide receiver. But I could see a contender giving up more for Keenan, thinking he's the final piece of their wide receiver group. Maybe get a day 2 pick for Keenan. Maybe get a couple teams in a bidding war and bid it up to a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I cut Bosa and Mike Williams I keep Mack and I trade Keenan because I think that's where the most trade value is.
Interesting.
I like that answer.
Okay. I could see it. Okay. I'm still sticking with mine though. All right. Charles Michael Sinclair, did the Chargers meet with Team Harbaugh before they left town? So if you guys are part of the Discord, you guys know that the Chargers team and John Harbaugh's team, not including Harbaugh, who's focused on the Rose Bowl, obviously, met with Harbaugh's team. And I found out today it was actually Don Yee. So they ended up meeting with his new agent, which is good news. And so they've already had a meeting, one, and then they were going to try to get a second meeting before he left town. I do not know if they got a second meeting. That's my real answer. I'm not copping out. So I'll find out when I find out, and I'll let you guys know. But they definitely met with the team. And then there was a lot of smoke around, the Chargers are going to really pursue Harbaugh strong. And that stems from what we had talked about. It's the fact that they had wanted to meet with his team already and meet with him more than once, get some FaceTime in before they can really start to have, real intense conversation. So that's very interesting. And I do not know if they met yet, but I will find out.
And that makes what now 4 conversations that we know of dating back to September. Is that right?
Hold on.
At least 3.
So post week 2, that was first, right?
Uh-huh. Then they
spoke after Staley was fired.
Yep.
I thought there was one more in there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. I can only think of the 3. Those are the 3 I can remember.
Right. So the next one would be the 4th,
Could be, yeah. Unless I'm forgetting one, but those are the 3 I remember. Yeah. So yes, they're definitely pursuing him, and they met once. Don't know about the second yet. All right, let's move on to the bad tweets.
What everyone's here for.
Yep, that's why everybody's here. All right. And I got 4 today. Bad tweet number 1. Man, that's slow. I will, if we land Harbaugh, I will slap anyone that ever tries to tell me the Spanos family doesn't want to win. Seriously, I'm telling you, if we get him, don't come at me with ownership slurs ever again. Go do your thing at John Dean Spanos. This has a little bit of everything, which I love. Is one is the verbose, over the top declaration. This person isn't going to do anything. We'll meet this guy at training camp. He's never going to do anything. He's going to tell us how much he loves the podcast or something. He's not B-slapping anyone. 1, 2, he tagged John Spanos in this, of course, because he's a real bootlicker. And then at the very end here, you throw in those emojis just to kind of sprinkle a little extra attitude on top of it. And again, ignoring everything that's happened since John has been head of football operations. This is the time we're ignoring everything else. This is the one thing that proves that they want to win.
Not just everything that's happened since John became head of football operations, but I mean, just think about the last 40 years. I mean, Mike Riley, Kevin Gilbride, June Jones, Mike McCoy, Lynn, Staley. I mean, Al Saunders. Just think about all of the shitty coaches they've hired to save a buck. All the miserable seasons they've had. Their complete commitment until recently, I'll give them credit, their complete commitment until recently to continuity in mediocrity or worse. And we're making declarations about how much the Spanos family wants to win. Now, they do seem to be changing their ways, and it does seem like they're going to hire Harbaugh, hopefully. So we're going to have to go on and eat some crow and give some credit where credit's due if that happens. But act like there is ample evidence that these guys want to win and that they're not just in it to collect a buck and be quote unquote competitive is, I mean, that's like next level obtuseness. It's just ridiculous.
High level, like, well, not even at this point yet because it hasn't happened yet, but still, if we're moving in that direction, high level recency bias. And I guess like willful ignorance is bliss for all the reasons that you guys already mentioned. So let's just tuck all of the history away because we'll all be happy if Harbaugh happens also. Like, will it make amends for everything that's happened in the past? We won't forget about it, but we'll move forward. We just can't pretend like none of that happened though. Like, and the glazing of the Spani here is just disgusting. Like, are y'all buddies or something? Because it feels like going
He
out of your way
tagged him.
here. I mean, people do that all the time. They tag players and everything, go crazy on Twitter. But it just feels like there's some sort of personal connection here, maybe, kind of, sort of. Or do you just really like those guys? I don't know. Either way, at the end of the day, if they make this happen, we will all be happy. But again, eating crow thing, Jamie, nah. See, we're not going to eat crow there because all they did was eventually turn it around and get it right. We'll give them credit for eventually doing it. You finally made the right decision and you're moving the franchise in the right direction. We're not going back and doing anything with regard to what happened because that's there. It's tangible. It's not going away. So let's be adults about this. But at the same time, people don't forget that crap. I mean, maybe you, but not us.
Yeah.
I mean, no, you don't forget the history. But to be fair, we've all been on record more than once saying pretty much they will never hire an experienced head coach because they don't want to pay for it. So if they do it, we do have to own up to it and eat some crow for being wrong about them being willing to spend and give up power for a real head coach. That's only fair. But the rest of this is that weird class of fans. It feels like because they think that like because you root for a team, you have to support the owners no matter how bad they are, no matter how big of a fucking joke they are. You have to lick their boots.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fans like that, which is just weird to me. Like they'll tell you, I don't root for the owner, I root for the team. But then when you get a situation like this, they'll lick the owner's boots, and it's just weird. With the history of this team, it just doesn't make sense.
So the other thing is, I've always been a proponent, and I stand by this, that when you get new information, you are within your right to change your opinion. And for the last few months, speaking for me specifically, I've said that, and people were asking us all the time, if I really thought they were going to pay an experienced head coach, a real head coach, someone with some cachet and a winning history. And the only reason why I started to come around was because I was seeing things that they had done here in the recent past with regard to taking some players on that they probably wouldn't. And some of that could be attributed to Brandon Staley, but they were starting to turn the corner a little bit. And you could feel like Dean maybe felt the pressure by being in LA and things were starting to shift. So I'm not going to say that like suddenly it's just like, okay, well, I know I never said this before, but it is what it is now. So like, nah, I felt like there was a shift coming. I'm glad it's going to be confirmed. But at the end of the day, the end all be all here is that we're just not going to forget about what the hell happened here in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
that's not a thing.
Yeah, we can't. How are we supposed to just ignore everything that's been in front of us for this long? Unless you just joined as a fan, that's good for you, but you can't. And also, by the way, hiring Harbaugh is only the first step. I mean, if they're not going to give him control, let him get the players he wants, hire the coaches he wants, the general manager that makes sense for him. If none of that happens and they just hire Harbaugh just because it's Harbaugh, it's not going to end up working. I mean, Harbaugh hopefully will take the reins, and I don't think he'll let that happen. But still, hiring Harbaugh is only the first step of the process.
But a big first step.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and they'll deserve credit if it happens. But let's not forget that John Spanos was directly involved in hiring the last 3 head coaches. Mm-hmm. And he's been right in the middle of building one of the thinnest rosters in the NFL for the last 9 years, 10 years. No.
Yeah. It's pretty, and it's really glaring when you look at it this year, because there's been so many injuries to quarterbacks where teams without their starting quarterback are still competing because their roster is good enough and they can get a backup quarterback and still compete. This team, once Herbert went down, they became one of the worst teams in the league, and now they're, fighting for a top 5 pick. All right, next up, these bad tweets. We might already have our head coach. Now, this happened on December 23rd, so I wanted to keep the date in there, but somebody saw this Charger team play and said, Gift's our guy. Out of all the possible scenarios, which there's a lot of fun scenarios. We talked about Tomlin and Vrabel and Harbaugh and a lot of these fun scenarios. To stake your claim here and be like, you know what, Gift might be the guy. Boy, that's a rough outlook. Having Gift as your good.
I feel like I know exactly who this is.
Oh, you do?
And,
okay.
Oh yeah, I know exactly who this is. And
do I know what this is?
Oh yeah, you do. And because I know who it is, I'm not going to make a comment because I've been accused of bullying. So
I bullied a guy out of not using the cat's header. I think
I'm going to step aside. I think this person's Twitter needs to be banned. That is my personal opinion. This is one of the.
Oh, I know who it is now.
This is on.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, this is on the more tame side of things. But with that being said, still and all, nope. That's it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they've played hard for Giff. Got to give them credit. They've played hard. The defense has been better. They've been tougher and more physical. But our next head coach, nope, not having it. To even think that that's a realistic option is kind of scary. Actually, maybe I don't know. Is there some head trauma there? I don't know. I'm a little worried.
I slammed my head on the desk and I ripped my camera out. I got so excited when I figured out who this was. That's why I went away. That was pretty fun. All right. Next up, 2 more. Some would say, so this is regarding an article
Oh my God.
by Florio about former GM Tom Telesco says thank you to the Chargers. And this person quoted the article that says, some would say Telesco didn't deserve his fate. He built a competitive team and he drafted a franchise quarterback. It's not his fault that the assembled talent hasn't sufficiently met expectations. He posts a GIF that says nailed it.
I gotta be honest. I know who this is, and
I do too.
I'm surprised that you picked this because I know you've had a relationship with him in the past. So I give you credit for calling this bullshit out. I didn't think you would, but I appreciate it.
Can I say up front, the whole reason I have a connection inside that locker room is because of this man. So I'm very thankful to him, and I am forever grateful for him. That doesn't exclude him from having bad opinions on sports, and that's what this is.
Come get these jokes.
This is just a bad opinion. We all have them.
Equal opportunity.
Yep. Ours will be in here in no time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually multiple times I started typing responses to this. And I'll be honest, I stopped because of your relationship with him.
Oh.
Because of what he did for the podcast. Because I knew I wasn't going to be able to control my response. That's how bad this is.
That's maturity, Jamie.
This is bad on a level of 11 years, 2 playoff wins, no division titles, repeated issues with no offensive line, no defensive line, no depth. Always being bit by the same injuries to the same players, continually running it back, having no success at all, being involved in the hiring of at least 2 terrible head coaches. But it's not his fault. What the fuck is that?
My question is, whose fault is it then?
I mean, it's a result-based business, right? That's what we're told. It's a results-based business. But apparently not for Telesco because they're friends, and we can't we can't criticize his buddy. Telesco can be nice. He can be your best friend. He can be a good guy, and I'm sure he's all those things, but he can also suck at his job. All those things can be true at the same time. And in this case, they all happen to be true at the same time.
Yep. This is a rough one.
I wanted so badly to respond to him on Twitter, and I had to stop myself because I knew it would not be good.
Well, here we are now. All right. One more. Right tackle is not a need. We gave Trey Pipkins right tackle. We have Trey. Oh, we have Trey, as in Trey Pipkins. Right tackle don't need to be great. This is mangled. They don't block an opposing defense's best pass rusher. So this is regarding a needs in the draft being right tackle. This person does not think it's a right tackle because we have Trey, and right tackle don't need to be great.
I'm sorry. One name, Max Crosby.
You're talking about one of the better pass rushers in the NFL?
Just one name in particular, Max Crosby.
Okay.
And I think that kills the argument. But this again is one of those things like, do you want to will this into being factual? Because you can watch the physical games and see that this is completely false. They paid Trey Pipkins, but they backed themselves into a bit of a corner because he wasn't really developed all that well. He had an average year, which made him look a lot better, but the bar was pretty low. Like he went from sucking to being serviceable to average. And because, that position, tackles, are at a premium in the NFL, you just don't find good ones or okay ones any and everywhere. They put themselves in a position where they had to pay him. So yeah, he's under contract now, and the ripcord is in 25. So yeah, for that reason, they're probably going to hold on to him. But that doesn't mean that they don't still need a right tackle. Like physically have one on the roster that you're paying, but he's also not very good. So you have one. He just doesn't really do the job the way that you would need to be successful. And also maybe the previous regime believed that he was in a position to go out there, be manned up on a guy one-on-one on the outside. But I can't get I'm sorry. Trey Pipkins has Max Crosby nightmares every week is what I feel like. Because that's the one name that pops out to me, no matter what. Every time they go against the Raiders, he gets murdered by Crosby. And that's a lot of tackles in the NFL. But again, don't say that the best pass rushers from teams don't line up over the right tackle because case in point.
This is a person who hasn't watched football in 10 years, is what this feels like.
The Chargers line up Mac on the right side. I mean, they move him around. And most good teams, have two really good pass rushers. Some have three.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always going to be facing a good pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
And they eat him alive. And that's my opinion. That's what you see watching the game with my two eyes that work and my functioning brain. But if you don't want to trust my opinion, go look at the stats. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Pipkins gave up more pressures than any right tackle in the game this year. He is a continuous problem on the offensive line. He may not be giving up sacks because Justin can move and Stick can move, but guys are driving him right into Stick's lap on a regular basis. He is a problem. And they took a guy for whom I think we could all agree going into last year, nobody had any expectations for him. Maybe Telesco had expectations for him. Maybe Staley had expectations for him. But for the most part, nobody had any expectations for Trey Pipkins going into last year. He was that bad his first 3 years in the NFL. And then he comes in last year and he was hurt most of the year. And he was slightly below average to average, as opposed to being like bottom, like the worst tackle in the league.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they looked at him and they said, oh, well, he was hurt. He'll be better once he's fully healthy. And, we praised the deal when they gave it to him. So we can't go back now and say that they gave him a bad deal. They were smart with the deal they gave him. wasn't a ton of money. Most of the guarantees are up front. They'll be out of it after this year. But to say they don't need to replace him and start looking at replacing him now is just ridiculous. Like, it's not true. It's objectively untrue.
Okay, I need to somebody in the chat is saying that Pipkins, if you cut Pipkins, you only lose $750,000. I don't think that's right.
That doesn't sound right to me.
Let me we'll pull it up.
Let's see.
I feel like I remember the dead cap being significantly higher than that.
Dead cat, dead money, $9.5 million.
So yeah, is that right? I don't think $9.5 million is correct. 2024, $4.5 million of his salary is fully guaranteed. $2.5 million signing bonus this year, plus $2.5 million signing bonus next year. Yeah, $4.5 million or $9.5 million. I guess they could theoretically make him post June 1 cut and eat some of that salary cap next year, but they'd still be on the hook for $7 million.
Yeah.
There's no way he's getting cut this year.
Quite worth the squeeze on that one.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, almost an hour and a half here. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Make sure, and somebody was asking, I missed the comment, how do you join the Discord? Go join us over on Twitter. We got a pin tweet, how to join the Patreon. You get a Discord link as soon as you join. Doesn't matter the tier. And you can come on in and join the fun over there on Discord. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.
Man, that was cool.